Good evening, everyone. On this very rainy evening, but at least it's not snowing because the weather forecast at one point was calling for snow. I love snow, but not almost May. So to start with today, I want you to think about some things. I'm going to ask you a few questions and just think about them. So what are your own ideas about what it takes to be a good person in the world? And where do you think you got those ideas about what are good behaviors, what are bad ideas, bad behaviors, good and bad choices? Are there certain character traits that might help or hinder your striving to be a good person? Think about some times where you acted in good faith and were your best self and did all good things according to who you are. How are your actions received by others around you? Has there ever been a time when you've acted that way with really good intentions, but someone else didn't react too well? For instance, like maybe you're a really friendly person and just like to go chat with anyone. You're stand around somewhere and start up a conversation with a stranger, and they just look at you like, "Who are you? Why are you talking talking to me? I don't trust you." So sometimes good intentions can not be well received. So what does it mean if your actions do affect others negatively? And if you have some behaviors that aren't so great and are not some wholesome traits, then can you change them? What do you do about that? What if someone else has some traits that aren't so wholesome? So I'm going to read to you from Understanding Our Own Mind by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And I'm just looking for it. Here it is. And it's very appropriate because we're in spring and a time of new growth. And I failed to do an Earth Day lesson last week. So this is about seeds and growth. So you can think of this as Earth Day lesson. If you plant a seed in springtime, by autumn, a plant will mature and bear flowers. From those flowers, new seeds will fall to the earth, where they will be stored until they sprout and produce new flowers. Our mind is a field in which every seed is sown. Seeds of compassion, joy, and hope. Seeds of sorrow, fear, and difficulties. Every day, our thoughts, words, and deeds plant new seeds in the field of our consciousness. And what these seeds generate becomes the substance of our life. These are both wholesome and unwholesome seeds in our mind field, sown by ourselves and our parents, schooling, our ancestors, and society. If you plant wheat, wheat will grow. If you act in a wholesome way, you will be happy. If you act in an unwholesome way, you will water seeds of craving, anger, and violence in yourself and in others. As we cultivate the seeds of joy and transform seeds of suffering in ourselves, understanding, love, and compassion will flower. So what he's saying here is whatever you plant inside yourself will grow, right? So if you plant positive things, if you plant positive behaviors and character traits like being friendly to other people, that will thrive. If you plant negative things inside you, like not being rude to people all the time, then that part of you will develop, and that's what will grow, and that's what you will become. And it isn't always obvious what character traits are good and bad. I think mostly it's obvious, but it's not always as straightforward you might think when you look at your own character. So I'm going to go through some character traits, and I'm going to go over if you think they're good or bad. So, for example, I fight for what I believe in. I think that's a pretty positive character trait overall. Unless you get a little carried away and are rude or hurtful, emotionally or physically to other people, and maybe that's not such a good thing. I get riled up easily. Yeah, that's probably not a great character trait. I look for the best in everyone. I think that's a pretty wonderful thing, as long as it doesn't blind you to who they are. Sometimes I know sometimes personally I can be a little naive about people because I like to look for the best, but I have to be careful about that because people don't always have other people's best interests at heart. I speak my mind. Now this one, I don't know, this one, I think it's pretty much a good thing, but once again, it's all in context, right? There could be a situation where it's not appropriate for you to speak your mind. And like if it's saying nasty things to other people. I work hard at school and in my hobbies. That's a good character trait. I keep my feelings to myself. That's probably not such a good character trait, not such a good thing to do because they can fester. I'm the first to support a friend in need. That's a wonderful thing. I find it easy to forgive others. Also, I think that's another great character trait. Once I've made up my mind, it's hard to change it. Now, this is mostly a pretty negative character trait because you don't want someone who's stubborn and refuses to see what's right in front of them. Actually, I don't get easily annoyed with people, but the one thing I can get really frustrated about with other people, and maybe this is one of my bad character traits that I get too easily frustrated by this, come to think of it. But one thing that really frustrates me is when someone makes up their mind and they refuse to see anything else except what they've already made up in their mind or come to that conclusion in their head, in spite of facts and evidence to the contrary. So they can look at something, someone could say, no, but it can't be that because of this. And they say, I don't care, I'm going to believe this anyway. And I don't have much patience with that. But at the same time, like it's good to stick to your guns, like to a certain extent, like you don't want to be wishy-washy. If you really believe in something, if you believe strongly in something, you want to fight for that. And finally, it's important to do what makes me happy. I think that's a good character trait overall. But once again, there's a little context there because you don't want to only do what makes you happy because sometimes that's not the way life works. Sometimes you have to do things that just don't make you happy. And obviously, if making something makes you happy that's going to hurt others, that's also not such a great thing. So now sometimes we discover that we've been nurturing a negative trait in ourselves, and it can be often difficult to just stop doing it, right? So it's like those seeds you sow. If you've already nurturing this negative trait, you've been sowing that seed and it's growing inside of you and it's just going to get bigger and become more prominent. And our brain tends to like habits. So if you do something over and over or act in a certain way over and over, it's even more likely you do it again. I tell my piano students that if they make a mistake, slow down and don't make the mistake again. Because if you make it again, you start training your brain to make that mistake. It's almost like you're practicing that mistake. So the more you make that mistake, the more it's going to happen over and over. And I do it myself. And so slow it down, make sure you play it right so you don't train your brain to do this wrong thing. Or like biting your cheek. You bite it once, and so you get a little bump, so you're more likely to bite it again. So it's the same thing with our character traits. Those that we nurture are those that are going to thrive inside of us, just like Thich Han said. But it is possible to change our behavior. So it's good to be self-aware, as they say, and in other words, to pay attention to yourself and how you act, how you treat others, and interact with those around you. And then maybe you can start noticing if some of your own behaviors and characteristics aren't that favorable. Like I just realized maybe I get a little too easily annoyed with those people that are stubborn. So this brings us to our Bible reading for the week. One of them, the first one, I'm going to read from Luke chapter 22, verses 54 through 62. And this is about Peter denying knowing Jesus. After they arrested Jesus, they led him away and brought him to the high priest's house. Peter followed from a distance. When they lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. Then a servant woman saw him sitting in the firelight. She stared at him and said, "This man was with him too." But Peter denied it, saying, "Woman, I don't know him." A little while later, someone else saw him and said, "You are one of them too." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." An hour or so later, someone else insisted, "This man must have been with him because he is a Galilean too." Peter responded, "Man, I don't know what you were talking about." At that very moment, while he was speaking, a rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter, and Peter remembered the Lord's words. "Before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and cried uncontrollably. So what's happening here? Peter was basically, 3 times he was asked if Jesus he had been with Jesus, and he denied it 3 times. And when he realized what he had said, he went and cried. Why was that? He was upset because he realized that he had repeatedly denied Jesus and denied the Lord, just as had been predicted, which he realized when he heard that rooster crow and remembered the words, "Before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." So he felt remorse. And this brings us to John 21, 1 through 19, which I'm going to read next, where Peter is apologetic and changes his behaviors and is forgiven. Later, Jesus himself appeared again to his disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. This is how it happened. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana and Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and 2 other disciples were together. Simon Peter told them, "I'm going fishing." They said, "We'll go with you." They set out in a boat, but throughout the night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but disciples didn't realize it was Jesus. Jesus called to them, "Children, have you caught anything to eat?" They answered, "Nope." He said, "Cast your nets on the right side of the boat and you will find some." So they did, and there were so many fish they couldn't haul on the net. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he wrapped his coat around him, for he was naked, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, dragging the net full of fish. But they weren't far from the shore, only a few hundred yards. When they landed, they saw a fire there, with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you've just caught." Simon Peter got up and pulled the net to shore. It was full of large fish, 153 of them. Yet the net hadn't even torn with so many fish. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples could bring themselves to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them. He did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When finished eating, Jesus asked Simon Peter, "Simon of John, do you love me more than these?" Simon replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." Jesus asked a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Take care of my sheep." He asked the 3rd time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was sad that Jesus asked him a 3rd time, "Do you love me?" He replied, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." I assure you that when you were younger, you tied your own belt and walked around wherever you wanted. When you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will tie your belt and lead you where you don't want to go. He said this to show the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. After saying this, Jesus said to Peter, "Follow me." So this is a pretty powerful message of forgiveness and of hope. The disciples are out fishing early in the morning, and some, as far as they know, random person on the beach tells them there's a shoal of fish next to the boat. They don't know who told them that, but they throw the net out, and sure enough, they catch so many fish they can hardly bring back in the net. And then John suddenly recognizes the stranger as Jesus. Peter jumps over the side of the boat and wades to shore, and then Jesus pointedly asks Peter, "Do you love me more than the others do?" And Peter, without hesitation, responds, "Yes, you know I love you." And Jesus asks this question a 2nd time and a 3rd time. And Jesus must have wondered if Peter must have wondered if Jesus believed him, since Jesus asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" When Jesus was on trial like this, Peter denied that he knew, when Jesus was on trial, Peter denied that he knew Jesus 3 times. as well. Jesus wanted Peter to remember that an important way to show his love for Jesus was to love other people, just as Jesus loved them. And Jesus loves other people like a good shepherd loves sheep. So that's what he was asking with his sheep. He was asking Peter to do the same thing, to love other people. Now, just as Peter begins feeling hurt by these being repeatedly asked if he loves Jesus, awareness dawns on him, and he recognizes that he's being given a chance to start over again. And he must have felt so full of gratitude and full of relief because he had this second chance. So, and he could change his behaviors and how he acted and how he felt to grow those more wholesome seeds, and those more is the wholesome, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, those wholesome seeds inside himself. So we can change, we can be forgiven for our past actions when we don't act so well. But in order to do so, we have to be aware of our actions and our attitudes and our behaviors and how they might affect other people in a good way or in a bad way, or maybe in unanticipated ways. And if we're able to see our less desirable characteristics that we all have and do our best to work to correct them, we can plant those good seeds inside us instead, and we can ask for forgiveness, we can improve our character and become better people. So that is it for this evening. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to your others, and I'll see you next time.